All right, guys. So today I want to talk to you about 5 potential reasons why becoming an entrepreneur might not be for you and why you might not want to become one. So now these aren't specific to me, but they're just things to keep in mind because a lot of the things and a lot of the people that I talk to are always asking me, what business model is right for them, what I love best about being an entrepreneur, what I love, most about the freedom, what all these certain things. And sometimes I see people that might be better suited in other industries or other business models where they have a little bit of not supervision but just a path, and they don't just basically need to find their own path or operate their own business for whatever reason. So I want to talk about 5 specific reasons why you might not want to become an entrepreneur. Now it's important to ask yourself first and foremost before we get into these, what is your purpose for doing this? Why do you want to work for yourself? Why do you want to operate a business? Why do you want to own a business? What is your purpose? What is your reason? For doing it specifically, and then that might answer your question of whether or not you're doing it for the right reasons or not. So first and foremost is that you don't have discipline. If you don't have discipline, you're never going to be a successful entrepreneur, period. When you work in a 9 to 5, a job like that, someone tells you, you have to do this, this, and this every single day. You have a deadline for this. You have to get this done by X amount of date. You have to email this person. You have a set thing, a set schedule, and a bunch of different, tasks that are expected of you on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, at certain deadlines. When you're an entrepreneur, you basically have to set your own deadlines. You have to be your own, boss, your own overseer. Nobody's going to be there to wake you up in the morning or wake you up in the afternoon or whatever, or push you on those late nights when you want to get something done and you really crave to be there and make that kind of money or be successful and drive the business. Nobody's going to force you to do those things. You have to have that, that discipline yourself. And if you don't have that internal discipline, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, if you're not becoming an entrepreneur for the right reasons, or have a goal or a vision in mind, maybe it's not for you. And so maybe, a 9 to 5 would be better suited for you. And that's not to knock anybody for saying that. Specifically, I watch a lot of Grant Cardone, and one of the things that he's talked about recently is that I believe he said more than ever in past years, more successful entrepreneurs have been, have become millionaires, or successful people, have become millionaires in the, new households become millionaires in the last, I think it's 5 years, than ever before. And a vast majority of them, more than just solo entrepreneurs or, anybody operating a business, the majority of them are actually people that work for other people. So it's what you can definitely get that done. You can definitely go that route. You don't need to work for yourself to be successful and to make a lot of money and to have that freedom. You just have to be, pick an avenue, be really, really good about it, be really, really good with it, be passionate about it, because when you have that passion, when you work hard, you can't help but be great at it. And when you're great at it, it's like that book that they talk about, be so good that they can't ignore you. When you pick something that you're passionate about and that you're driven to do, you're going to find success. So make sure you're becoming, you want to work for yourself for the right reasons. First and foremost is you need discipline. Number 2 is that there's no security. You thrive on security. And obviously something like a 9 to 5, even though that doesn't technically have security involved because you get fired just the same. But there's no sense of security. There's nobody's putting your money into a 401k. You don't pay taxes and that's definitely one that we're going to talk about in a second. Nobody's taking the taxes out of your paycheck. So you have to be cognizant of how much you actually make, because you don't make everything that you get initially. You have to save to pay some taxes. And so it's important that you understand that you might not, if you don't have discipline, it might not be good for you. But if you thrive on security and you need that sense of security in your life, it might not also be for you, because, just like anything else, you're gonna always want to improve. You can't get complacent. And just because you've been successful the past month, if you're working for yourself, you're an entrepreneur, you're gonna have to continue to up the game and up the ante and continue to improve. Complacency is an entrepreneur's worst nightmare, and it's anybody's worst nightmare, to be honest. But it's important to understand that there's no security involved here, which ties me into number 3, which is that there's not as much freedom as you might think working for yourself. Now, don't get me wrong, there's definitely a lot of freedom. And one of the best things, and literally one of the most things that I love about being, an entrepreneur and working for myself, is that I can wake up in the morning and literally do whatever I want to do. Let me X out of this. Something just popped up on my screen. I can literally do whatever I want to do. And that's something that I value heavily. But I'm also very driven and I'm disciplined, and I don't necessarily need the security aspect of it as well. And so what I'm saying is, a lot of people think that, they get sold these pipe dreams of being working for themselves. You can hop on Amazon and start private labeling, and that will pay you 20 grand a month every month, and you can literally just go off and travel the world and do whatever you want while Amazon's working for you. There's some truth in those types of claims, but you still have to work for everything that you get. You're gonna have to put a lot of late nights in. You're gonna have to constantly be learning, improving. Otherwise, somebody is they're always looking to take your spot. And if you're not constantly improving and you're not constantly innovating, somebody's going to overtake you. And I promise you, there's not as much freedom as you might think. A lot more entrepreneurs actually work harder, believe it or not. And that's not to knock anybody else that's working 9 to 5 or anything like that. There's a lot of people that work very, very hard doing that, for sure. But just be cognizant of the fact that there's not as much, freedom, so to speak, by working for yourself as you might think. You still have to get up, have the discipline, work, hard. And yes, you can travel, and you don't need to necessarily take off time, from your work, or, file or ask somebody to do that. But you definitely still have to work hard. It's just a different, hourly work hard, and it's different. It's just slightly different. Now, number 4 is that you have to understand taxes. And this is something I absolutely hate, and definitely was a barrier to entry for me. Not only do you have to understand taxes and setting aside money and how much you're actually going to have to pay, but you have to, because you're going to do it for yourself, obviously. Nobody's going to take that out of your paycheck or vice versa. But it's also important to understand taxes from a business standpoint, so that you understand, how to write things off, what you can potentially lease, how to make money by not paying as much taxes. Because not only can you make money by making money, but you can also make money by spending less. And one of the ways that you can spend less is not pay as many taxes. So, for example, if I were going to lease a car, I would lease it with my business name and write a portion of that off. This apartment that you see that I'm always in, I write a portion of that off, because literally right here, right now, this is my office. So I believe I can write 35 to 40% of it off. I forget. I'll have to touch on that with my CPA and my accountant. But it's important to understand and be cognizant of these types of things, so you can kind of integrate them into your business, save money, which makes you make more money. And I'm actually very fortunate that one of my best friends is an accountant and a CPA, and I can bounce ideas off of him, and it really, really helps me out. But it's important to understand taxes. It's definitely important to get yourself an accountant or a CPA, somebody that can keep your books up to date and really help you with the overall tax game. That's really going to help you as an entrepreneur. Finally, number 5 is you have to be able to adapt. Regardless of what happens, in the world for, other businesses, brick and mortar stores, other things like that, 9 to 5, careers. You have to be able to adapt at a moment's notice. If you've ever checked out, and I'll drop a card to it right now, my expense report, which I did an entire video of going over my expenses. I talk about all the money that I make in different business models. Specifically, 2 of them that I'm going to talk about right now are Amazon. Almost gave you the finger there by accident. Amazon and digital content creation. If specifically Udemy would go under and the platform didn't exist anymore, that would be a heavy hit to my income. But I have a bunch of other incomes and income sources and business models that pay me out every single month, so I'd be fine. But it's important to understand the fact that you have to adapt to these things, because if that were to go down, I would have to adapt and maybe introduce courses on a new site. Maybe just forego creating courses altogether and put all my interest and my drive into something else. You have to be able to adapt. Specifically if Amazon would go down, I wouldn't be able to do online arbitrage anymore. I wouldn't be able to private label anymore. And specifically, I would have to adapt and send my mentality to another business model and my focus to another business model. So it's important to understand that you shouldn't definitely not put all your eggs in one basket and differentiate your income, especially when you work for yourself. Don't just be solely reliant on one source of income. But on top of that, you have to be able to adapt. You should be constantly learning, and not just, from business to business, but within a business too. Udemy's constantly updating and their algorithms updating. Instagram's constantly updating, their algorithms updating. And that's a great example of it as well. Amazon's constantly, increasing different things and, introducing new, one of the great examples with Amazon is they just took a bunch of people's reviews down because they're kind of cleaning up the reviews. So you have to be able to adapt and figure out a way to get more reviews, or please the new algorithm, stuff like that. So you have to adapt from business to business, differentiate, but also within businesses as well.